audio and visual podcast, a weekly discussion about all things guitar building and some random tangents as well, featuring members of the Guitar Builders Collective from all around the world. The Guitar Builders Collective is a like-minded group of individuals that have come together to share their experiences, knowledge, and inspiration for guitar building. Each week you can join us in the live YouTube chat or catch up at a later point. It's also available as audio, where you'll miss out on seeing our lovely faces and some of the visuals we share along the way. You can also find the Guitar Builders Collective via our forum, over on Instagram, where we share images of members' builds. We've got a thriving Facebook group, and we do hope that no matter what your experience and knowledge is, you'll become a welcome member of this community too. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone, and welcome. We're live. Right, I'm just checking because we're live at a different time. Therefore, I'm in a different space because I can't disturb my family. I'm on a different setup, and I think it's working. But if anyone's in the live chat and notices anything, let us know. You'll spot from our faces that Ray from Tasmaniak Guitars is joining us again. And if you are someone that has been watching since we first started this, you might recognise Miles over here. Miles McNally, who joined us on episode 15. We're on episode 82 now, which seems a bit crazy. That was in October 2023. Yeah, a year and a half ago, Miles. Welcome back.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
So look, I'll leave a link in the description for Miles's Instagram and YouTube. Same for Ray and myself. But also there is the link to where Miles was on the first time. And when Miles was on the first time, we talked a lot about your journey, Miles, into how you got into guitar building. So I won't repeat that too much. One thing I remembered, because I was watching back at it earlier, was that your first guitar you built was a NES based one or SNES?
It was a Super Nintendo.
Super Nintendo, yeah. I built a Sega Mega Drive one as one of my first ones as well. It's just like a really crazy thing to do, and I love people that do crazy things. And one of the other things we talked about in that episode was all the things we're going to talk about a bit later on, about all the different instruments you build and how that might be connected in guitar building. But we're talking about people that innovate things and seeing changes in design. Scott was with us on that one. And Scott obviously likes making these ergonomic guitars. We talked a bit, you may not even remember this, Miles, we talked a bit about fan fretted acoustic guitars that were built in strange shapes as well. But what happened was a couple of weeks ago when Mark was on with us, who I don't think is going to be able to join us today, we were talking about this idea of other instruments and what we can learn from them and bring into guitar building. So Miles, I was wondering if we could just start by maybe reflecting on some of the other instruments that you build or have worked on, because I think you build and repair, is that right?
I build and repair, and I don't really restrict it to one instrument. If it's got strings, unless I'm not confident, I'll take a crack at it. So yeah, I mean, my primary ones, when I started out, I had a small space, so it was mandolins, and they were easy to crank out and do a couple at a time in that space. And then from there, obviously guitars and basses. But yeah, I mean, stringed instruments have just always been an obsession and a passion of mine. So I started branching out into more and more. And what we can learn from all those other things is, I guess, not significant differences, but the term luthier comes from lute maker. So every instrument maker has donned that title, because in essence, all those instruments are the same basic thing: a box that makes sound, a playing surface, and strings to make the music.
And I know one of the things we talked about last time, because Scott had spent some time in Japan, was some of the Japanese instruments you have as well. And we will. Oh wait,
I also have recent inquiries.
Oh, now is that one you're repairing at the moment?
That is one I'm repairing. I'm working up the courage to reskin it.
So remind us. So what's that instrument called again?
That is a shamisen.
Shamisen.
So it's one of the traditional Japanese instruments, predominant in most of their music. So, but it's basically I guess, a hybrid of a guitar and a banjo, if I had to give it a title. So,
trying to link it to our Western knowledge.
yeah.
And what when you're saying you're plucking up the courage to reskin it, what goes on it?
So mine will not be traditional, but most people don't realize that shamisen are made with cat skin.
Right.
And it's like, it is the predominant, most sought after sound for a Japanese shamisen. Here in the States, we can't get that. So I'm going to be putting calf skin on mine, but I mean, it takes a whole jig with clamps they call kisen, that they clamp all around the skin, and then they use wedges and rope to tighten it all down. But I've never done it before, so that's why I'm working up the courage to doing it.
I love that.
I thought you were going to say that you're still trying to find a cat.
Yeah. No, I've got calf skin. That's pretty easy to find here in the States. So
it's funny because I do remember I'm talking about the materials that things are made from. Obviously, Ray, your instruments are all 3D printed. So there's a different collection of materials there, more modern and more traditional, maybe. So Miles, can you give us some examples of some of the other instruments? Because you sent an image the other day to the group that were part of the Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
Of an instrument you're working on that looked quite insane.
I'm building a arch lute. So an arch lute, it's within the lute family, but it has a whole nother head on it that has droning strings. So instead of being your traditional, I think most lutes are 14 course normally, or 14 string, but 7 course, 6 course. This one actually has another 6 bass strings on it.
And by droning strings, do you mean you'll play them at the same time and let them drone, or do they ring and resonate whilst you're playing?
So it's much like a harp. So they're not on a fretted surface. They hang off of the top side of the neck, and they're basically tuned to different notation depending on the piece you're playing to drone while you're playing the rest of the fretted notes.
So would you play like all of them, or do you need to be particular about which ones you're playing? Like, are they tuned to a particular chord, so to speak?
Yeah, they would be tuned to a specific tuning, and with lutes, that's based off of whatever pieces they're playing.
Right.
So it's not like a standard, guitar tuning where it's the E, A, D, G, B. It changes from piece to piece.
So when you say you're working on making that at the moment, is that something you're making for yourself?
Yes, actually. So it's something I've always wanted to dive into, and I just never had the courage to. But I don't know if you follow a guy on YouTube named Brandon Aker.
Oh, no, I don't know.
He is profoundly good with old Renaissance and classic instruments, and he plays, the tiarbo, the lute. He plays an old Baroque guitar, and the list goes on and on. And so he had one that he had a luthier build out of an old oud. So the oud was torn apart, and they used the body to create an arch lute. And it's so hard to describe, but it has this sympathetic resonance to it that sounds like it's being played in a cathedral. And I was just immediately honed into it. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, if you get a chance or you ever see this, can you send me measurements?
Oh, amazing.
And he did. And then I sat on it for a while because I had other projects come up, and I'm finally now getting to the point where I'm diving deeper into it.
So is it the challenge of making it that's appealing to you, or is it also that you want to play it?
Both. At this point, I'm up to about 13, 14 different instruments that I play. So, that is always a factor in the ones I try and take a stab at. But the challenge has always been something that has driven me in any of my builds. That SNES guitar, that was a buddy saying, you can't do that.
Yeah, right.
And so I did it. So.
What I remember we talked about on the last one as well, your build for the Great Guitar Build-Off. The Great Guitar Build-Off has not something we talked about much recently because obviously it's not happening. But for a few years, a lot of the people that part of the Guitar Builders Collective, a lot of people that sort of join in with the chat on the different social medias that we're all on, have all taken part in or been part of the Great Guitar Build Off. And what I remember about your one standing out was that challenge of doing something different and embedding, at least on one of the years, the thick resin with the
it was the Bob Ross painting.
Yeah, the Bob Ross painting. But what's the word I'm thinking of when you cut the shapes, put them together? Why can't I remember the word? It's the evening for me. I'm more awake in the mornings. Oh, you got it there.
It's just different segments of wood that I cut out to create that painting, and then, I mean, you can't really tell because of the thing, but they're layered, so it kind of gives it a 3D depth. And then I just encased it all in resin. So
cool.
Amazing.
Yeah, I have always.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, we're back.
Yeah, I always approach my YouTube channel as a showpiece. So, I mean, I can sit and build the same guitar over and over and over again, but it's not appealing or entertaining for a channel that people are going to watch regularly. So I always push myself to come up with projects that I think would not only entertain, but also teach. And I also want to push my boundaries to show what I'm capable of. And so I spend a lot of time thinking of what's the next project going to be? What can I showcase? What can I do? Or what do I know I can do that I haven't tried yet?
Well, it sounds like you're essentially then just having a YouTube channel that is what you do with your everyday building, or that idea of challenging yourself and testing yourself. Yeah, fantastic. So I just want to reflect, because there'll be lots of people that haven't watched back to the first 15 episodes or whatever. You're obviously building this new lute-like instrument for yourself. You've got that with 2 guitars we just mentioned. And most of the instruments you've got in your collection, ones you've built yourself? Or are you also, when you're talking about the different instruments that you play?
I would say the ratio is probably 40-60. I mean, I build a lot of them. I don't hang on to everything I build. Obviously, I do have customers still, so as much as I don't want to let anything go when I'm done with it, kind of have to pay the bills. Yeah. But no, I collect various other instruments outside of guitars. Guitars is my most built instrument, so I have quite a few of those ones. But I've always had the desire to create a museum of sorts. But one of the reasons I challenge myself to build them too is because I want one to show in a case, and I want one that people can actually tangibly pick up and feel. But obviously, some of the instruments I have are pretty high quality, and I don't really want people messing those up. So I'd rather build one so that or like this one I have sitting here. This is a Japanese biwa. This is 200 years old, give or take. So it's irreplaceable at this point. So.
So for people that might be listening, because we do this live on YouTube, but I also end up putting the audio up as well. Can you describe what a Japanese biwa is? Because it looks lute-ish.
It is a lute. So the lute is not only as an instrument, but it's an over-encompassing category. So many cultures have lutes. So this biwa is one of Japan's lutes. I mean, you've got the moon lute from China. You've got a pipa, which is another version of a lute from China. And I mean, the list goes on and on. This is kind of, as a building standard, this is kind of where it all started for most instruments. Because obviously instruments were made before then, but the lute is really what standardized it and why we use the term luthier. And why there are so many variants that look like lutes.
So is the implication of what you're saying that all of those have the same origin, or that people were making similar instruments in these different countries, and that somehow a sort of base level of connection was made between what everyone was making?
I think it's both, really. They will have a similar origin, and there are also those that were building similar instruments just out of coincidence or happenstance. And if you think back to the theory of it, the way that it's set up makes sense. So it wouldn't be surprising that two people came up with the same concept, even if they look similar but are different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's one thing you do see across a lot of eras, and I guess civilizations is that while the instrument is very, very different, the instrument is also very, very much the same at the end of the day. It might be the amount of strings and I guess scale lengths, we could say, differs, but the general construction and the general, like the methodology behind the build is very much the same from what I've always been able to see. There may be, obviously, I guess there's always going to be like different construction techniques.
Yep.
That's obvious, but the outcome, I guess, is the same.
Yep.
And of course, the difference as well with the woods that are available and the materials that are available. But I'm assuming as well, or maybe I'm assuming this wrong, that although they look similar, I was assuming they'd be made in a way that the tunings felt very different, that the frets would be very different to suit the style of music and that exists in different places.
They are. This biwa is a perfect example because you see the frets. There's not many of them, and they stand very tall off the fretboard. A pipa is constructed in the same fashion, but these were just, they would drone them while they would tell stories. Blind priests would actually play them. So it was more tangible for them to feel them if they were raised this high, which is, part and partial to the people that it was appealing to. So, there's a lot of factors that play into that, and those tunings, those are just determined by the stylized music in those areas.
Yeah.
But like he was saying, the concept of the build is, it's very much the same. And building the lute myself, I've had to notice that I have to take a step back and remember I'm not building a guitar. Because even though the components are very much the same, like the neck joint, that was a big one where I'm glad I didn't start cutting, because I was going to start cutting a dovetail and putting it in just like an acoustic, but they don't cut a dovetail. They cut this angle and then they glue or get the two pieces together and put a spike through the neck, and that's what holds it together.
So I think this leads into the sort of thing that maybe we were talking about on that episode of maybe a month or so ago, the idea of maybe there are things like you just mentioned, the way a join is made that's different to what we're used to doing from our tradition, that maybe could be brought in, and how interesting it might be to see those sort of elements come across. I guess. Sorry, Ray.
Sorry, Dan.
I was going to say, if you were to make a lute with your dovetail joint, would it feel like? Presumably it would work, but would it feel like you've not made a lute to you?
I don't think so, because there are Arabic ouds that are built with dovetails. It's still different than how a guitar is because it inserts this way and not down, but it's still a dovetail, so it still functions, it still works the same. And I think the way they did it horizontally instead was maybe more to hide the joint. I'm not certain of that, but those constructions are still there in other builds. It's just how they assemble it is a little different.
Which brings me to my question that I tried interrupting you with, Daniel.
Oh no, sorry, please interrupt away.
So you've made 13 to 14 different types of stringed instruments. And that will be, it was 13, 14, wasn't it?
Well, that's how many I play. I don't even have a count of how many different ones I've built. So. Or worked on.
Okay, so you made a lot of different types of instruments here, from a lot of different eras, from a lot of different countries, using a lot of different methods. what would you make if you were to put them all together? Like, what would you take from, different countries, different instruments, and if you were to make a Miles stringed instrument? And have you done it?
I have not, but I'd have to say,
why not?
It sounds reductive, but with all the ones that I've built, if you took all those standards and put them together, it would be a lute. I mean, when it boils down to it, it all comes back to that. It would be a lute of some sort, But then it differs for the tunings that you're doing, or the scale, or how wide the neck is, and whether you're playing it like this or whether you're playing it like a guitar,
So given that you were making your own creation, is that something that you could change?
I think ultimately the standards would all still be there, because you can't get away from having the playing surface. You can't get away from having the strings. You can't get away from having the box that makes the sound. So I think ultimately there would be some sort of variant of all those things.
Yep. Hence why you say it would just be a lute, just a different type of lute. Yeah.
And that's interesting.
Well, I guess in that instance, at the end of the day, when we talk about like an acoustic guitar, it's really a lute.
Yeah, it's a lute.
This conversation reminds me of a particular project I had to do at secondary school. So I was probably like 13 or whatever. And we were learning in science about animals, sort of biology and things. And we were being asked to design the ultimate predator. What would the ultimate predator be? Mix up bits of different animals or something. But obviously not a very thought through question, but to help the students think about all the benefits that different predators have depending on their environment. And of course, an ideal predator would just depend on the environment and all of that. And it does sound like that you could take all of the bits from different instruments, but when they combine, they need to fit together somehow. And that's the core thing that fits it together, the way they need to be used. But what I'm kind of interested in as well is the range of materials that you use. Like you just mentioned the cat skin on one, and there's obviously different traditional materials. Obviously not worrying about a tone wood debate type thing, but there are materials that you find either through the repairs you've had, or when you're playing an instrument, or when you've been building, particular materials that you find more interesting to work with or nicer to work with.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's wood. I mean, for me, it's all wood, and I love exotic wood. So it's.
I've just remembered what I titled the episode you were on last time. We titled it, "Does the smell of wood affect the sound of it?" Because we talked about the exotic woods and the opinion woods. Hey, I've just seen Menno in the chat. I wonder if anyone in the live chat wants to join in with any questions, please do. But I just wonder about the woods that we have in our different locations, because I've been thinking about that more and more recently. The idea of at the moment, a lot of what I do is customizing guitars. So I get the guitar in already, but I'm on the point where I'm going to be building a few, and I need to source the materials for it. And the wood isn't that important for me for the visual quality of it. I'm looking for something for the weight. And I've been looking for sourcing things locally. And we had Jason from Maybury Guitars on recently talking about how he gets a lot of his wood just from reclaimed places, going to yard sales and flea markets and things like that, and buying old tables and chopping boards and using wood like that. So it was just interesting that when you're repairing an instrument that's got cat skin, how you have to find the equivalent for where you are.
Yeah, I mean, lumbers here are, I say basic because it's what I can get, but in my particular climate, we get a lot of pine, and that's not ideally what I like to use for instruments, so I don't really use it. But outside of that, it's maple is one of the biggest ones that we can get here. So when we reclaim furniture, and I'm fortunate enough to be in a part of Michigan that's by a furniture capital that is no longer the furniture capital, but they used a lot of maple. And so we can find it reclaimed everywhere.
It's funny, actually, we're talking about maple. I've noticed, I don't want to get political, but I've noticed a number of the guitar builders that I follow talking about the cost of their instruments going up at the moment because of all the they're American based, because of all the tariffs coming in, and how much of the materials that certain builders use comes in from Canada. And I'm just wondering if they're going to keep doing that with their higher prices, or start changing their wood to something more local, or from a place with different tariffs applied to it.
The problem with guitar builders is we haven't really changed a lot in the last 100 years. So there's a standard, and that's what people like to stick by. And I mean, all these ergonomic guitars and the fan frets is something that they tried in the 80s, and it just wasn't received. But we still build out of the same timbers. We still, I mean, your predominant fretboard is rosewood and ebony, and so there are still those standards that you really have to get somebody to take off to really shake that. But I think all the big companies are still going to stick with what the guitar is, you know?
Yeah.
I'm slowly working on changing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're in a time where we're actually seeing a lot more change than we have in the last 30 years or so. But, you know, when Fender and Gibson came on the scene with electrics, I mean, they were demonized for it. And now look at them, you know, and that became the standard of the electric guitar. So
I've just been writing a bit about the use of nitrocellulose and acrylic lacquer in guitars in the 50s and 60s, and how, of course, lots of people still think that is the thing that we need on our guitars because that's what was used back then. So that's obviously the best choice, that because the first guitars that built obviously made all the best choices you possibly could, because they didn't need to experiment or research or try things out, and they had a wealth of money. They didn't just use what was local and easy to obtain. But yeah, there do become traditions. In fact, I remember last time you were on, we were talking about using CNCs and how you, Scott, myself hadn't used CNCs yet. And I noticed in the chat earlier, Curtis was there, he's had to go now, but he quickly jumped on and asked some people in the chat what CNC machines they use, because there's a few people here that all use CNCs.
Yeah.
Funny. And of course,
still not done into that.
No, it's something.
The problem I find that with a lot of luthiers jumping to use CNC is not that I have a problem with them doing that. Clearly, I'm the last person that can have a problem with that. But it's such a massive unknown for them to move into, because you have to learn the CNC, you have to learn how to use the CNC, the software that comes with the CNC. But it's not just that. You've got to learn how to model and draw what you want the CNC to do to begin with. And it is such a scary road to go down for so many luthiers, I could imagine. I mean, for myself, it's second nature to have a complete 3D model of whatever I'm going to build, because that's the only way that I can do it. If you ask me to walk into my shed, actually you can't walk in my shed at the moment, it's filled with boxes, but if you ask me to walk into my shed and build a guitar completely using hand tools and hand tools only, that's a scary prospect for me.
Yeah.
Could I do it? Yeah, play the second one, don't play the first one I make.
Yeah, that sort of, that idea of jumping into CNCs being a challenge and being new, that's sort of like the challenge that Miles is talking about, even using the hand tools and the tools you normally use, you're building something that's built in a different way, and you've got that challenge and that new approach and sort of scariness to comprehend.
I'm not scared of the CNC. It's just a little out of my pocketbook. So
yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing I keep thinking about. It's like, how much do I need new tools? I just bought a new planer. Do I need a new planer? Well, I know I'm going to use it on my next couple of builds, so I know it will be useful.
I'm struggling with the desire for a drum sander. I am sick of doing acoustic sides and planing them down by hand.
So, maybe you haven't had that many since last time you were on, but have there been many builds since last time you were on that you would like that we can discuss a bit, or is it mainly repairs that you've been doing?
It's been a lot of repairs, customizations, and I mean I've had a few builds here and there, and those are for customers, so I don't even have them around to even show you. But yeah, I mean the most recent one that I did was it's again on the lute theme. It was a Gutierrez, but it had a old mandolin back, one of the potato bug ones. So we decided to stylize it after a medieval lute. So it had the curls and carvings in the back, and it was a fun challenge.
So, sorry, was that built from scratch, or were you using some old instruments as part of it as well?
I kind of regret it now looking back on it, but he brought me an old mandolin, and the back was in great shape, aside from some cracks. But so I was like, okay, that'll make it simpler. I don't have to make a bowl. I can just use this one and then refurbish, what I need to. And it ended up turning into a restoration before I could even start building, which I probably won't ever do it again. So
I think that's
it was half and half,
Yeah. How do you find how did you find that process and the idea of not doing it again? What would you do next time to tell someone that you're not going to do it? Because when was it, a year and a half ago maybe, I decided I wanted to do more repair work, and then I realized I don't like doing repair work. I prefer from scratch.
The problem with this one is it wasn't repair work necessarily. This was a custom instrument that we were building. So I think it's because it ended up being a hybrid of the two that if I were to build one again, I would just build it from scratch. The problem is I don't do bowl backs normally, so I don't have the jigs set up to glue those together to cut them and do that. But if that ever came to be where I get one or two more requests, I may just end up making the molds and doing it from scratch instead.
Yeah, right.
It's a lot easier to customize the bowl to your build than to customize the build to the bowl, if that makes sense.
Yes, that does make sense. I had to go through that in my head. Again, apologies if I'm slow.
I'll catch up in 30 seconds, I think.
I'm not used to being up at this time. I know it's not even that late, but because I normally get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, so I'm in bed by 8, so it's a bit random thing. But yeah, I guess what I was trying to get in my head is I like using these sort of calls as a bit of a therapy session to help me work out how to do the things I'm doing, and particularly working with clients, because I'm not sure if it's the same thing, but I've had a couple of times now someone come to me with something to do, and then whilst we've been working on it, it sort of changed, but not just changed slightly, changed so dramatically that it's almost like a different project.
Yeah.
And by the time we got to the end of that project, because I'm so eager to please the customers along the way they want, I've got to a point where I'm doing something I don't want to do, and I've not really enjoyed it very much. And it sort of put me off doing those things. And it's how do I deal with a customer like that? How do you deal with a customer like that when you don't know that's going to happen? You maybe don't even anticipate that's going to happen early on.
I learned early on. Obviously, this build was a little different. It was actually my sister's boyfriend, so I kind of felt obligated to finish it off. But I learned early on, especially in repairs, that if there's something that I can't hourly see and know what it's going to fully take, that quote is open. So I give you a base quote, like this is best case scenario, and this may alter by the time we're done. And they know that going into it. So, I mean, I just had somebody with a viola the other day that had a crack up the neck, and he didn't realize that it went all the way through both sides. And so that's another one where it's like, I can tell you that it's going to be around this, but until I get into it, I can't tell you how much it's going to cost.
Yeah,
crack repairs are always dicey. So
yeah, I think that's very sensible to have that flexible ballpark figure. Things might change. I think for me, what it was with that particular build, for example, is we were going to do this, and then the design kept changing, but it changed to such a point that all the work I'd already done got scrapped. And what I probably should have said was, I've done all this work. We either carry on with this, or we start afresh as a new instrument, and we just do all the costs again. Because that's what ended up happening. Really, it was the cost of buying in materials, changing things, and so it was basically, it was just a guitar, a strap type guitar that he wanted, with particular electronics in it that made it a bit more complicated. But then as we were painting it, he wanted a different paint job, and that actually meant stripping off what I'd done. And then we changed the components inside, so actually I had to reroute all the cavities. I mean, this guitar was more like one of the ones that I experiment on when I'm trying to get a design right, a prototype, and an actual finished thing in the end, which was fine for him because he was happy that we kept changing things. But I think that's what I've learned, is clients can get excited by the process, and it gives them more ideas. And because the process takes time.
Unfortunately, in those situations, there has to be a distinct separation of business and trying to be a buddy doing a favor.
I think you're right. That's what I'm not good at.
So in those cases, I always, when I quote instruments and they go ahead and they sign off whatever they need to, they have to put money down then and there. And anything that is added or changed after that point is an amendment to that quote.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I have to calculate what the different cost is, and if I've already bought materials, it's a wash at that point. If I have to buy more, that gets added to it.
Yeah. I mean, all very sensible. You can tell I'm not the best businessman when we talk about this. Yeah.
I've managed a lot of places. So
I think one of the problems I have is the builds aren't quick. So when I'm building and I'm sending updates as we go along, and someone sees it, and then they're like, "Oh, we like this. Could we add this now?" Or, "Oh, that looks good. What would happen if we do this?" Is that reining that in a bit? Because that's how I would work if I was making something for myself, as I do in my own time. Things change and evolve as I'm doing them. But it's a bit hard to do that when someone's paid you, and also you've got other jobs lined up that will get knocked on by it all.
Yeah, but that's why I always encourage those amendments or change orders, because I mean, if you're set in stone with a customer, every change can drastically change things.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I also don't like the ones where they give me free reign, because that makes me nervous. It's fun, don't get me wrong, but it's like, are you sure you're going to like it when I'm done?
Yeah, especially when they start telling you, just like a purple. What sort of purple? So you choose, man. You choose. It's just like, no, we will not choose. You choose.
I had someone that asked me to do a paint job that it was an airbrush art design on the back of a guitar in sepia. So we agreed that we'd already agreed the design, but they wanted it in sepia. So I did it all in sepia, sent them a photo of it. And they said, no, I wanted it in sepia. And it turns out they didn't mean sepia. They meant a different color. I can't remember what it was now. But in their mind, they thought that was sepia. So we had to have a discussion about that. That was a bit annoying.
I had one where I built a ukulele. It was a friend. She wanted it for a gift for her now husband. But the only thing she gave me was the inlay. I want this inlaid on it. I was like, okay, what size do you want? What wood do you want? I had to pry until I could get her to agree to things. And I was like, okay, I can have you sign now that we got to a point here, but I need something.
Yeah. Well, I've got a client at the moment who's paid me for the guitar up front, and it's a gift they're buying for someone else, which is brilliant. I mean, I wish I had that much money to buy gifts for other people.
Yeah.
And I've asked them a couple of times, what do you actually want? And they say, oh, I better ask them what they want to make it for them. And I'm just not hearing back from them. So I've got this annoyance that
That's frustrating.
It is frustrating because I need to get on with it. I'm giving them a deadline soon where if they have what I'm going to say to them is, if you haven't discussed it with the person, then I'm going to build you this for them, and I think they'll like it, and that'll be it.
Yeah.
So basically, it's a design. They've seen the design, but there's loads of options in it. And one of the options is the same design could be a guitar, it could be a bass. That's like fundamental to it. The other things are then just where, like, what pickup combinations it's got. So if I don't hear back, I can just go, I'll do 2 humbuckers or whatever it is. But I don't know if they want a guitar or a bass yet.
That's frustrating.
Okay, right. Then I got to build them one of those Mark 6 basses. You know, remember
Then you're battling them both. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I so need to build myself one of those. There's I started listening to this band, Australian duo called Roxferry. And it's sort of like an audio slave, sort of Rage Against the Machine sort of sound. But it's just 2 guys. It's just the guitarist and the drummer. And the guitarist plays a Mark 6 bass. And every other time throughout the years that I've heard someone playing a Mark 6 bass, they play it like a bass. You know, I'm guessing that they're just using the Mark 6 because the strings are closer together, so they can get a lot more technical because there's less spacing. But I don't know. But this guy, he's just power chording this, this bitch, and then just, he's just piling in the gain, and it is the heaviest sound I have heard from one guitar in the longest time. And I've just gone, I need a Mark 6. I've got to have one of these things.
My brother has one, and it is a fun time to play.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would do with it if I had one, but they're a lot of fun.
Well, look, it's one of those things. It's just like, you have a look at how many guitars you have, and it's just like, I don't know why I need this many guitars, but I'm going to have them.
Yep.
So,
mine I'll do something different. So
yeah, that helps.
Okay, mine don't. mine have different sounds. Sorry, honey, if you're listening. They all have very different sounds and different purposes.
Yep.
But Miles, yours definitely sound different, and it sounds like you play them all, which is brilliant. But I like this idea. I want to just go back to this idea of a collection for a museum that you were talking about. That idea. Yeah. So what would your dream idea be here? To have various instruments from around the world, or through time, or a mix of everything? Are there key things, instruments you want that you haven't got? That
it'd be time through time and from different parts of the world. And I mean, the whole ideal behind it is that I would obtain one and then I would build one. And the build one would be one that people can actually tangibly touch and play and mess around with. Right now, it's Japanese instruments are what is really drawing me right now. Obviously, I have the biwa, I have the shamisen, I have another one called a sanshin, which is a smaller version of a shamisen. But what I've been looking to get my hands on recently is a koto. A koto is it's a zither instrument, so it's a flat board, and it's got various different harp strings, and they play either side of the strings, and then they can do bends on one side while they're plucking the other, and it makes a very interesting sound. The only downside to that is they are large, and I don't really have the space to store it. So
I'm just going to do a screen share. Just look that up as you were mentioning.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, right. Look, here there's someone playing one, so I can see the hands on it. Is that sharing okay? Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. So I'd love to get my hands on one of those. That's been one I've been eyeing for a little while now. So.
I love that. Looks like such a pain to set up.
Yeah. And with all Japanese instruments, they actually take the strings on and off as they travel with them.
Oh wow.
So it has to be set up and tuned every time you set it up.
Yeah. So the so that goes back to what Scott sometimes says about guitarists not knowing about their instruments properly. I mean, he says it in slightly more harsh words. Guitarists don't know about their instruments properly, so guitarists probably couldn't take all the strings off, put it all on. But the Japanese instruments, the players need to understand the instrument properly.
Oh, but it's even further. It delves even further than that, because like even the shamisen comes apart.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's how they travel with it. I mean, it breaks down, and you can put it in a small little box and take it on the train with you. You know.
I love it when you see every now and then I see clips from NAMM. Every couple of years, someone's got the new folding guitar or whatever that you can pack away, and
it's not a new concept.
Yeah. And actually,
the folding one, Tierabos have a folding mechanism on the upper headstock, and they fold in half to then travel in a case. And they've been that way since the Baroque and Renaissance era.
Yeah, incredible.
So it's not a new concept. So
brilliant. So that goes back to the idea of things that we can definitely learn from other instruments.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry, I just one of the things that, like, yes, I 3D print guitars, and one of the challenges I've been trying to overcome is not 3D printing a neck, but 3D printing a neck in multiple parts. And Mark, where are you? You're supposed to be here. You should have seen this. My brain just rebooted when I saw the way that neck was assembled.
And it's a gorgeous joint too. I mean, you can't really tell it's there. So
no,
but I mean, it's just a pin and a half, and then it just fits in, and so tightly that it disappears.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. My brain just shut down and rebooted. I've been looking at things very wrong.
I mean, it's like if you follow any of those Instagram channels that show Japanese woodworking and woodworking joins that they have, they're incredible. And they make it look, the craftsmen make it look so easy the way they're cutting and fitting things together. And in my mind, I know if I was to do that, even if I was to like put all my effort into it, that it would never look quite as amazing as those ones do. The joins would never completely disappear when you put it together. I'm always slightly overzealous with my standing. Suddenly something will be slightly off. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Well, I mean, like for myself, the only way I've managed to do it is by making the join part of the actual design.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Japanese joinery is something that I have also always been fascinated with, and I mean, I strive to be that good, but I think that'll take a long time to get there. So,
well, you never know. You might get there with your experiments in these new instruments. It might help discover something new.
Yeah, I don't know. One day it'll click.
I was just watching someone. It wasn't even a Japanese joiner. It was someone doing a repair. It looked like it was a door frame, but the frame was off, and they were fixing it. And they were basically it was them working with music, but it had captions over the top. And he basically said that he felt that every join should fit so perfectly together that you can't see it. And it was just a frame, and he was just cutting a bit out and putting a new bit in, and it just looked like two bits of wood, and then suddenly it was one bit of wood. It was incredible. I know I'm sounding ridiculous here. Maybe it's my overtiredness speaking, but I'm just envious when I see really good woodworkers working. But then I'm worried that if, for example, I was to go to CNC, that even with CNC, where everything is done on a computer, so you know everything should match, when we've had people on before who work in CNC, that there are tolerances that you have to work around, and you're using your bits to cut and things. You have to compensate for all of that. And I'm slightly aware that even if I design something CNC, I put it together, my nightmare is it would all come out and it just wouldn't quite fit, or it would all be slightly wrong, or something would be slightly off. And it's that learning curve of trying to get all of those things right.
I have a friend who uses CNC pretty predominantly, and he even admits that, yeah, it gets it, exactly the same every single time, but there's still that finish work at the end.
Yeah.
You still got to sand it. You still got to do all that. And, it's not 100% perfect. And it's because of what you said, because of the tolerances that are in there.
I mean, one of the things I absolutely love about woodworking is the fact that I am sometimes quite sloppy. And that means that when I'm, as I've just been doing last couple of days, sanding the edge of a body and shaping the edge of a body and the comfort carves in a guitar, they're not all going to be the same each time. And I quite like that. I quite like that I'm doing it by feel, and this particular one feels right. Like I was just working on one, it was a kit guitar someone sent me, and I used it to hack up and change some shapes on. I don't even know what wood it was, but it was much heavier than the wood that I normally use. So it worked quite differently, and it just a totally different sort of way I was working with it. And because of the weight when I was holding it, I felt like the carves had to be slightly different. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
They don't have to be different, but it felt like that to me, and that's how I was working with it.
I find it also, makes a difference in the end product too if you're doing it by hand. I mean, even from what you're saying, just from feeling it and going, I need to change this, and that. But even if you make a mistake, it becomes a part of that piece. And I've actually found in many builds that it inspires me to change something that I wouldn't have thought of before.
Yes, exactly.
So I feel like that gets lost when you do most of it mechanically. So
it can and it doesn't. I guess I could say one of the things that I find is that when you're using a CNC, it depends upon how far you want to go with the machine, letting the machine do the work. So I've seen bodies that have come, like a fully assembled guitar, and people are, showing it off on the internet. And after a while, I've just picked up the ability. I can look at it and go, that guitar is made from a CNC, and that guitar was actually designed and modeled in Fusion 360, because I can tell by the way that the fillets and the radiuses on the guitar are done, or on like the belly carve and things like that. I can, I'm just so used to working with it, I can see it. But you don't have to let the CNC go that far. As far as I'm concerned, with the CNC, it's okay for it to let it basically give you a finished product that you just need to assemble. Give it a quick rough sand and do that. At that point, you are just manufacturing a guitar. However, if you were to let the CNC cut the body shape, do a rough cut on the carves, and the finished product that it gives you is nowhere near usable. I mean, what's the biggest thing that luthiers hate, or not hate, but when you're going to say you build a guitar, it's just like you got to love sanding. Sanding is where you spend most of your time. If you use the CNC like a tool to just give you a rough cut body, you are still going to put your heart and soul into sanding that thing down and creating those edges and those bevels and those curves. Or you can turn around and ask the CNC to do those things for you, and give you a complete thing. But once you've got this thing that is far from perfect and needs a hell of a lot of sanding, is it really that much different? I mean, you put the guitar, you put a slab of wood on a scroll saw, and carve the body out that way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want this to be a dissing CNC episode, because definitely not doing that. And there's definitely skills about it. And like, if you look at, I've been following Shop the Fox recently, Ty, on Instagram. The things he's doing with his CNC is so interesting. So I don't in any way want to say that I don't like it. I just, at the moment, and as Menno's just pointed out in the chat, I do enjoy the sanding process, because I do find it slightly therapeutic, and I do find that suddenly you get control in how the shape's going and what's happening over it. And I've discovered that I'm not even when I plan my designs in advance, my designs change while I'm making them, and I like that hands-on thing, which I'm sure I would still do if I was using CNCs regularly. I'm sure I would still work in that way of adapting what I'm doing as I'm going along through it. It's different. Hey, look, can I change the point a bit? I'm at the moment experimenting with some different finishes. I've got some tung oil, some hard oil wax. This is sort of like a bit like a Danish oil, and some finishing oils here. I'm trying them on different necks that I've got hanging up in front of me here. And I was wondering, Miles, when you're working on these instruments, are there common ways things are finished in the kind of disparate countries?
Yeah.
Or is it all like this is all finished, we have wax finishes, or is it more than that?
It really depends on what I'm building and what wood I'm using. I primarily do oil finishes. I like the workability with it better. And when I do colors, depending on the oil that I'm using, it can help accentuate those colors too, because certain oils have a different hue to them. So like for, say, you mentioned tung oil has a more of an amber hue to it, but linseed oil is clear. So it won't really alter the color so much. So if I'm trying to add a different hue to whatever wood I'm using, I may use tung oil because it is that amber color. I don't have it around me, but I've got one that I did in a tobacco burst finish, and I used tung oil because it's browns and yellows, and it helped accentuate those colors.
And so you're not in. So for example, when you talk about not having cat skin available, you're not necessarily thinking, "Oh, I'm making this instrument. Maybe I should try and use the sort of oil that might be used in the country of origin for that instrument."
No, not necessarily. I mean, when I do build those, I love to try and keep it as traditional as I possibly can. But I also know that I'm not from there, or I don't build those things the same way. So, like, I mean, the lute is a perfect example. I don't have one of those. They use a long nail to set the neck. It's just a square spike nail, and I'm using a bolt. I don't have a long spike nail, nor do I know how to set that. So I'm using what I have. So
Yeah, fair enough.
But the screw is set in the same process, so it's still not different. But I'm using a different material.
But when you've got your 200-year-old instrument, though, what sort of finish is on that? Can you tell? Is it?
It really depends on what the instrument is, and thankfully, those repairs I predominantly do guitars. So those finishes haven't changed too much in a long time, and if it's pre, the 1900s, it's probably shellac.
Yes,
and it's always a safe bet. And the nice thing about shellac is it's easy to blend into other finishes, so it's usually my go-to when I'm repairing.
Shellac seems quite universal, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was one of the most common ones for guitars back before the 1900s. So if you can't figure out what it is, more than likely it's probably shellac of some sort.
It's interesting because we talk about like the traditions and why people might use certain things, but I've mentioned this before. More and more, I find it odd that we use products that have. I'm not a vegetarian. I'm not vegan. I eat lots of meat, but still find it odd that we use a lot of things like the shellac that originate from or made from animals, or insects, and it just seems odd that we're not using more chemically produced, not killing animals products. Just look at the ones I've got here. I've got my shellac over there. Obviously, it's made from it's lac beetle, isn't it? That's what they're made from. Oh no, it's not. Actually, I'm wrong. It's made from the excretion of the lac beetle. It's not necessarily killing them off.
Yeah, but I mean, the oils are nice too because most of them come from plants or trees. So,
yeah,
I mean, for our vegan friends,
Hey, Ray, I didn't mean to shut you down before about the CNCs, but something I did want to sort of discuss is obviously something that I've done with one of your guitars. I've got it here. Is I painted. It's 3D printed guitar, but I painted it, and I just wondered, do you ever think about that anymore? because I know we had this slight conversation about it. Is it just, why would you bother painting a 3D guitar or finishing one?
Well, look, I actually did put a finish on one recently.
All right, oh no.
Yeah, but probably for a different reason. It was white. It was a white guitar. So I learned very quickly during the assembly of that guitar that white stains very easily.
Right.
And it is not coming out of the polymers. So I reprinted a few components and clear coated that. That's a 7-string telly that's I'm going to be releasing soon. That's I'm been really looking forward to finishing up. Yeah,
because obviously Miles was talking about the using the tongue oil, etc., for the colours how it affects the wood. But one of the things I'm thinking about a lot more recently is the feel, the tactile feel of it all. Like there are certain finishes that I've used for a long time because I like the way I can finish with it. I quite like using polyurethane finishes, but I don't like the feel of it as much as I like the feel of nitro when it's finished. But I like maybe I like, not sure yet if this is right, but I think I prefer using the polyurethane when I'm sanding it and working on it. But I'm trying to think more and more about the tactile finish of it. I'm loving this tongue oil finish at the moment on this one here. I keep reaching over and touching it. I've got hard wax on this one as well. Shiny pink metallic hard wax. But yeah, the feel, it really does change the feel a lot. And I guess if you're 3D printing necks now, or experimenting 3D printing necks, Ray, what's the feel like on a polymer, on a finish on that?
So as you know, you have your layer lines. With a 3D printed neck, if you just leave it once you are done, then you are covered in layer lines. Actually, hang on.
So I actually have a 3D printed neck right behind me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Ironically, see if I can pull her out.
I don't have one.
Oh, well, we just discovered while you walked off that Miles has got a 3D printed guitar there with it.
Well, this is it's a Colas guitar, so this is an aluminum body, but it had a 3D printed. It's a carbon fiber impregnated 3D printed neck.
Yes.
Yeah. But she don't get as much play as she used. But it's smooth. So I mean, they must sand it down afterwards, but you can tell it's printed.
Exactly. And this is what I was going to say was that once you go to a 3D printed neck, like with the bodies, as I've said a lot, I don't finish them. I try to avoid post-processing because I don't want to hide the fact that it's 3D printed. I would love to not have to post-process the neck, but playing a guitar that's got layer lines all the way up the neck is not nice.
Yeah, right. No, but we're saying it's not nice. But I'm like, Mark did mention once that he tried, was it CNCing the back of the neck? And I've forgotten the company. There's a company that put a pattern in the back of their neck.
Yes.
Meant to help glide the Z.
That was Dean Zielinski.
That's why it's the Z glide. So I wondered if just by chance a 3D printed neck had this benefit that no one was expecting, of this feel of the layers that actually makes it more interesting. Or
if I'm not mistaken, those textures are done with a CNC.
Yes.
So,
but they're quite ornate.
Actually, I watched a video on it. They're actually a laser. It's they laser etch those textures. Because it was like to do it. The first one was done as like a test, and it was just like a shits and gigs sort of thing. And then it turned out that they really liked it, so they bought a whole bunch of new machines.
All right.
And the one that actually does that engraving is not the new machine. They basically relegated the old laser to just putting that finish on the necks.
Nice. So your experiments, Ray, you're sanding down your necks or doing something to them.
Yeah. So I'm basically, look, I hate sanding. I will do anything to avoid sanding. I know I'm a terrible person. So I've been looking at other ways of doing it. So doing things like using ABS and acetone, and just allowing the acetone vapors to smooth out the neck. I've also found that you can't leave the acetone vapors hanging around too long, otherwise it softens the neck too much and the truss rod will bend it. But yeah, just essentially just trying to find different ways of doing things. The way I've done this whole process of 3D printing guitars is I start with doing what you would do with a traditionally built guitar, and then that's my basis. I know that works. How can I improve on it using this type of material? So 3D printed necks, yep, it works. Yes, I can sand them down, definitely. What other methods can I use? That's the process at the moment.
I do love your experimental approach on it all. It's brilliant.
Avoiding what he doesn't want to do. That's a great approach. So,
I'm going to just say it again. One reason I like sanding is it does let me avoid the things that really need to be done, because I can just go into another world doing it. I've got into audiobooks at the moment, and I can concentrate on sanding and listening to an audiobook, but I can't concentrate on an audiobook when I'm doing certain other tasks in the workshop.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah. Well, Miles, you actually said something at the beginning about why you do a lot of what you do. And I had to have a laugh, because it is the exact same reason that I've made. I must be pushing 60 guitars now that are 3D printed. But I've done that many because someone told me that I couldn't. And the moment you tell me that I can't do something, we're doing it.
Yep.
Yeah. Hold my beer. 100%. We're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that Dan mentioned the Mega Driver guitar, because that's what spawned the whole challenge with the Super Nintendo. Is we saw him for the first time, and it's like, no one can make a guitar like that. And I was like, watch me. And I hadn't built a single guitar at that point, so I didn't even know what I was getting into, and then I was obsessed. So,
and it stayed. Yeah, I love it. Do I remember you saying that was when you were 15?
Yes.
Or teenager? Yeah.
I was 14 or 15. I think I was 14 when I started building. So
I had totally forgotten until recently that when I first started learning guitar, I can't remember how old I was. I think it was 9 or 10. In my grandmother's loft, they had two instruments that belonged to my dad's dad, and we got them out. Took one of them. One of them was suitable for me to learn on, a Spanish guitar. Took it to the local shop to get it restrung, and they basically said, "This isn't really a guitar. It's so damaged. We can't really repair it. You need to buy a new guitar." I wish there was YouTube around then, because I probably could have worked out how to do it and what it needed. But the other guitar I stripped. I remember getting paint stripper, stripping off what must have been nitro on it. I remember the fumes. It stunk. It was hard work. I managed to strip it all off. I repainted it, and I couldn't work out how to assemble it properly. I didn't have quite all the parts, or I hadn't really worked it out. It was some sort of arch top. I have a vague memory of it. Some sort of arch top, steel strung. It could have been a absolute classic instrument that I'd ruined. Who knows? Because then I don't know what happened to it. It went into my parents' garage. I clearly threw it away because I'd left it for too long. But yeah, I remember having that curiosity as a 9 or 10-year-old in wanting to change what the appearance was of the guitar. but I hadn't quite worked out how it worked and didn't know how to find out how it worked and how to fix it. So as a 15-year-old, to look at something like that Mega Driver guitar and think I want one like they've got and do it, it's brilliant.
Well, I mean, that's not where it all started. I mean, my first electric guitar, I started about the age of 9 playing. And I remember my first guitar, it was one of those Epiphone Goth SGs, the all black one. And I would put holes in it. I would put new pieces and parts on it. I remember I threw a kill switch on at one point just because I thought it was cool. Well, we got really obsessed with Buckethead at the time. And I mean, that's when my dad saw me and goes, if you're going to do this, you need to learn how to do it right. And then I dove into that guitar. And after that, I was set up with an apprenticeship. But yeah, I always loved taking things apart and putting them back together. So
I think that is an approach that's slightly lost. I'm speaking to a friend recently who works for a council in a place called Bristol in this country, and they're commissioning people to set up things for the public, different things that the public can interact with. And it's a kind of open commission. It can be any type of thing. But one of the popular things they've got is someone has set up a shop to repair things. And community will come in like that they used to do in a repair shop. They'll bring their old vacuum cleaner or they'll bring something along that needs fixing. And this person who's quite good at fixing lots of things fixes it, but then teaches you how to fix it as well. So it's a community hub for people to learn how to repair their everyday items. These kind of skills of taking things apart and reassembling them or working out how they work that we've lost in a world where we can just order our new one on Amazon the following day.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate truth these days that, I mean, not a lot of people want to do a lot of those things for themselves. It's much easier to pay someone to do it.
Yeah.
Or replace it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I enjoy the taking apart, and I want to install that on other people, which is why I love YouTube, things like that.
Yeah.
People, there are those curious minds. That's why you want to have a particular project that's different each time.
Yeah, my son is kind of in that way all of his life, but recently he's really liked taking apart electronics. And when he told me he wanted to do that, I was like, don't take apart anything we don't want you to take apart. But it's like, sure, go for it. You have something that you don't want anymore and you want to figure out how it works. I mean, that's how I learned how to do a lot of things.
Yeah, brilliant. No, I definitely used to take things apart. Again, not really paying attention to how they fitted back together.
Yeah.
I was just more interested in the components inside and what new things I could do with them.
That was always my problem. Is I'll take it apart to figure out how it worked. Couldn't figure out how it worked, so I couldn't figure out how to put it back together again either.
Yeah. I think that's where we all started at one point.
About the grandfather clock.
That's the thing I still like about guitars. I've been following Nick Petrak, who was a guest on the show before. Not long after you were originally, Miles. So probably a year a bit ago. His Instagram, he does a lot of repair work, and he had a guitar in that he said the client said it's just gone up this on Instagram today. There's part 2 going up, I guess tomorrow maybe. The fret markers, the fret dots had recessed a bit, and so he wanted them replaced. So Nick took them out to replace them. And then the first one he took out, the one nearest the neck, the body, took it out. There was a screw underneath it. And this guitar neck was bolted on with one bolt that went through the heel of the neck into the body. And then it had a screw that came in from the top that went in somehow into that bolt. And so when he took these out, the neck came off. And then there was this big spring under the main bolt to hold the neck on, which he thought might be some sort of weird sustain element or something, or somehow applying pressure to hold the neck in place. But yeah, it was just interesting because I'd never seen anything like that, and I'm not sure he had. And there's always surprises in guitars. Most of the surprises I find though, because I will customize or work on a cheap guitar, is you take it apart and you realize how badly made it is and the things that
Yeah.
have happened on the inside to hold it together, which are hidden from the public.
Or when you strip back the paint and realize how much filler they used on it.
Yeah, oh, God, I've got, where is it?
And how much was paid for it in the first place?
Yeah.
I stripped back a guitar the other day because I wanted to do a kind of relic job on it. So I wanted to do something. I knew it wasn't going to have, because it was cheap guitar, I knew it wasn't have like the best wood grain on it, but I just wanted something I could work on. It was bloody MDF. I stripped back the paint. It had an MDF finish.
I have an old Harmony that it's press board.
Yeah,
I mean, it's 2 inches thick, but it's press board, and it's the same thing. They had so many dings and dents in it that they had patched the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so I repainted that one, but I usually stay away from paint myself, but not because I can't do it, but I just prefer a natural finish. So
yeah. Well, I'm slowly becoming a convert. The more I do that, again, that's one reason I've got all these finishing rolls here. The more I work with, the more I begin to like it more and more.
Wood grain's beautiful on its own. I don't need to paint over it, so, unless it's plywood, you know.
Yeah. I guess from coming from a background as an artist and someone that paints and draws, I just want a canvas to work on. I want to maybe get the balance between the natural wood and the work I'm doing on it. I saw someone.
Sorry, guys, work phone keeps ringing.
Is it all right? Because I know you might have your emergency repair work happening in the house.
Yeah. It's the actual customers ringing into the shop, and I'm not in the shop today, so it's there's 10 other people that can answer the phone.
Fair enough. Hey Miles, I do want to ask you one other thing that's been like I've had my eye drawn to it while I've been talking. Can you tell us about that green guitar behind you?
Thank you.
I'm thinking the same.
This is my take on an acoustic sonic. So this is a mango top done in an aqua burst finish. So it's got a little bit of that blue and green. And then this is it's an old butcher block table.
Oh, it is, right.
Yeah. This was one of 2 guitars I built during that Use What You've Got challenge that we did 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Yeah, so I made 2 guitars, and this was one of them. And I had a butcher block table, so.
I think I remember what I remember now. You hold it up closer, and I can see it was the sound hole. That is,
it's an Acoustasonic. So it's got your single coil, it's got an undersaddle pickup, and then it's got a piezo in it.
It's very cool. While we're just talking about that, we haven't arranged it yet, but Corey wants to do another stream soon where we focus on that Yerg's Cup again. The idea of maybe, I know he's busy behind the scenes planning another challenge for anyone that wants to join in, another excuse to make things and share what you're doing with the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So just again, for anyone that's listening or watching in the future, we're going to be changing the way we do the live stream. Essentially, for a long time we've tried to have a different guest on each week, and often when the guest comes on, if they're a new guest, a lot of what we do is talk about their background in guitar building, how they got into guitar building, etc. And what we want to start doing more of is having people back on like Miles, where we don't necessarily talk so much about that, but we maybe have a topic or something that we focus on. And what we might do, I mean, this one hasn't been much shorter than normal, but what we're thinking of doing is having them as 45 minutes to an hour max long, just maybe shorter chats with recurring guests, maybe more people than just 3 of us. It might be 4 or 5, who knows. So I'd like a bit of feedback if anyone's watching and has got any thoughts on that. If that doesn't appeal to you because you love an hour and a half chat with someone new each time, let me know. If you are interested in that idea and you're someone that's been on before, let me know. We after last week, I had a few people message saying they've been on before and they'd love to come back and chat. So hopefully lining them up again. Yeah, I think there's something different about having a return conversation. But one of the problems, Miles, is let's not leave it a year and a half.
Yeah.
There's something about it the conversation maybe doesn't flow quite as well a year and a half later.
Mm-hmm.
I like that we did talk about some of the same things, which is quite
Oh
fun.
yeah.
So
I mean, talking about instruments, I can go for all day. So
yeah, well, see, that's one of the things that I love about the community. It's just chatting to people about things that I'm interested in and they're interested in. Because as we say, it's not like an everyday topic that you can find people on the streets to chat to. It's not quite the same. Although I saw someone at a guitar show recently. I think he must live around the corner because I keep seeing him on the way to drop my daughter off at school. I keep seeing him crossing the road just further down the road. So I've got to try and time it a little bit better so I can bump into him, find out if he lives locally, and have a local guitar person to chat to.
Yeah.
Rob likes the chat, he says in the chat, but he's not interesting enough to be a guest. Rob, you often mention things in the live stream in the chat that we end up talking about. So I'm sure you are. Yeah,
would make perfect sense.
Yeah, maybe you're interesting enough for 45 minutes. Let me know if you want to come on. yeah.
Hey, Daniel, I just want to point out that you timing it so you bump into this other guy to have a friend to talk guitars with kind of sounds a little stalkerish, mate.
Yeah, it does sound a little stalkerish, doesn't it? Yeah. No, actually, I think he runs a guitar shop in town, and I might be looking for some work. I don't know. So actually, we've got a guest on in a couple of weeks. Simon from 81 Guitar Works, who does repair work. That's what he does for a living. He makes guitars as well, but mainly makes repair works. And he has recently started working at a shop. He's like got bench there. He's there once a week doing repair work. And I'm looking forward to talking to him about that because I often say that I think the people that probably know the most about guitars, or some of the people that know the most about guitars, are the people that work in guitar shops and get to handle so many guitars all the time. And it's becoming more and more something I want to do, to have a job where I'm in a guitar shop around guitars, or somehow around guitars that much that I can play with. Not because I want to play them as a player, because I want to examine them as someone that's making, basically. So I'm intrigued to see what it's like doing his job and wondering if that's something that I might have the...
I don't know if it's the shop per se, but I think it's just repairing in general, because I've done most of my repairs through my own business, and I do that out of my house.
Yeah.
And I have worked for a few shops before, but I think it's just the amount of guitars you get and just repairing them in general. And I find that same fascination as, well, how was this one made? It was made in the 60s, whereas this one is made, 2017. Yeah. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess back to the business thing, because I did do a year of doing repairs, and it was just the problem I had is every now and then a repair would come in that I'd done before, so I would have some of the things I needed. Like the first time a Gibson headstock brake came in, I built a little jig to make it easier to repair it.
Yeah,
that made it quicker the next time. But then every now and then a repair, or most often a repair would come in that was something a bit different to what I'd done before. So often I needed to have something slightly different to help fix it. I have to order in slightly different fillers, slightly different waxes, slightly different whatever. And then it wasn't becoming economical enough because I wasn't getting enough of the same repairs come in.
You definitely gather a lot of extra things for specific purposes.
I saw someone who is a professional repairer talking about this, and he was saying that he now turns away certain types of jobs because he's got enough work coming in that certain types of jobs that take a little bit longer, he doesn't do anymore. He sends them to a different shop down the road because it's just not economically viable for him to do these slightly more complicated, more interesting jobs. Financially, he has to just do the kind of fret levels and stuff like that, which is fair enough.
I mean, those are the bread and butter. So.
Yeah, exactly.
On the same hand, I mean, that's a pretty good problem to have to turn away work.
Yeah, no, but I think what he's saying is he has to turn away the more interesting work because you can't charge someone enough. You can't charge someone enough to do those slightly interesting jobs that are one-offs because it costs more on materials, it costs more on time, and therefore it becomes not viable to charge the client that amount. You have to charge which is
100%.
reasonable, but when it's doing the fret levels, he can get through so many in a day that he can earn a proper wage. But doing the
It'd be like a luthier trying to charge for every actual hour spent building a guitar. No one would buy it. It'd be too expensive.
Yeah. And that's always the problem with taking repairs too, is justifying the work and justifying if it's worth paying what you have to take in to do it. I mean, I had one in a while back where it was like, you're looking at about $500 in repair, but you can buy this guitar for $7. So is it worth paying that? And this person, it was a sentimental value because it was their first guitar, so they wanted me to do it. But you have the opposite effect where it's like, oh, I'm just going to buy another one. I'll spend the extra $200.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I'm the same. I actually recently damaged my very first guitar, which was a Les Paul Junior, and it's an Epiphone Les Paul Junior with the doggy P90 and all that. And the reality is it's trashed. It's done. It is not worth repairing this guitar now, and I'm going to repair it.
Yeah,
because it's purely and simply, it's just like it's a sentimental piece for me. Complete with all the dings and scratches, it is worth repairing that headstock. Even though now I could probably walk into a local guitar shop and pick it up for under $300 brand new. And one of the things I did to this thing was I modified it to take a humbucker instead of a P90 because I thought that was what I wanted, was a humbucker. Turns out I actually prefer P90s. But that the new Epiphone Les Paul Junior has a humbucker instead of a dog ear. So I could buy it brand new and it'd be exactly the way I wanted it initially. And I'm still not going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm still going to spend way too long to repair that thing.
It's not that guitar. That's the big thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But one of the first repairs I did was someone who had his dad's guitar that his dad played in the 70s in a band. His dad's still around, but it doesn't use the guitar anymore. And he wanted to restore it to what it was originally like because his dad had done so much custom work on it and it'd been a bit damaged over the years. And give it back to his dad as a gift. And I thought that was such a nice sort of sentimental thing to do, to have that history of the guitar restored and given back. I loved it. Well,
but it also takes away some of the history too.
Yeah, it did. But I mean, so the paint job was pretty horrific on it.
Yeah,
it was taking away some pretty horrific stuff.
But it tells a story.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, I took photos of it and made a video, so I documented that story. I remember we were discussing that idea partly with that in it. At what point does it stop becoming the original guitar? Because obviously I put a new scratch plate on it that looked more like what the original scratch plate would have looked like and things like that. It's not really the original guitar anymore. It's a bit, but it was the actual wood of the body's the same, the wood of the neck's the same, so it is the same guitar. But at some point, like there's a, do you know the Only Fools and Horses show? Only Fools and Horses. It's a British comedy show. In it, there's a guy called Trigger who is a road sweeper, and he's had the same broom for his entire 12-year career. And everyone's asking him, how has he managed to make his broom last so long? And it's because he's replaced the head of the broom 5 times and the handle 7 times along its 12-year journey. So it's that idea, is it's still the same broom, but for him it's the same broom because it's had that continuation from when he first had it. All of those changes.
I have a Strat like that. I have a Strat that is on its second neck, and it's also on its second body. As far as I am concerned, it is the same Strat. You know, there is I don't think there's an original part left on that guitar, like machine heads, pickups, pots. Probably not even the strap locks. The strap pins are going to be the same because they're now strap locks. So yeah, 100%, it is a different guitar. But don't try to convince me it's a different guitar. It is the same Strat.
Here's the question: when you changed the neck, did you keep the old neck? When you changed the body, did you keep the old body? Could you put them back together? And now would you have like a clone of the guitar? How does that work?
Don't do that. Don't do that to my brain. No.
I just have to apologise. Barry points out in the chat, I totally butchered quite a good comedy moment when I tried to retell the Trigger's broom. So I will never do that again. Apologies, everyone. I actually
sorry, I'm stuck on which Strat is my original Strat now.
Right, I think we've had a good hour and a half, and this is a late night for me. Ooh. So I'm going to say good night. Thank you, Miles. Thank you, Ray, for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've left a link to Miles's YouTube channel and Instagram, so you can go follow him, and Ray's is there as well in the description to the video and the podcast, and also a link to when Miles was last on. And then hopefully, when are we now? So if we did it in another year and a half, that would be that would only be 2026. We wouldn't be in 2027 yet. But
yeah,
really, Miles.
Yeah, it'd be like September 26 or something like that.
Hopefully before then.
Yeah.
2026. What's going on? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And see you all. And next week, I think we've got back to normal timing. So do check out. There's also a link in the description for the whole playlist of all the podcasts that we've done, which also got the forthcoming one, so you can check out the time for that. All right, take care, everyone. See you soon.
Yeah, see
you guys.
The Guitar Builders Collective is a group of like-minded people from all around the world at different stages of their guitar building journey. You can join us over on our forum to seek advice or share tips on guitar building processes, materials and tools, or just to share your builds. On YouTube, we have a regular podcast of guitar building chat where you can join the live stream or watch back on past episodes. Our Instagram page shares posts of members' builds and links you direct to their accounts. And for those of you on Facebook, we've got a private group that you can join, share and chat along with. The Guitar Builders Collective is a welcome and open space for all, so do pop by and say hi.